I'm not supposed to remember this case. That's the phrasing they used back in '77. Not classified, not sealed, just something that never officially occurred. Those were the words. I didn't understand how a thing could happen and not happen at the same time until I spent 23 years wearing a ranger badge. By then, pretending became second nature. My name is Charles Wilton. In 1977, I was a senior forest ranger assigned to a stretch of protected land most people only knew from postcards. Tall pines, clean trails, scenic overlooks. Families came for the quiet. What they didn't know was how carefully that quiet was maintained. I'm recording this now because the men who told me to forget are either dead or too old to stop me. And because the forest hasn't forgotten. Not one detail. Back then, everything ran on paper and habit. Paper maps with coffee stains in the corners. Logbooks thick with years of pencil marks and erasures. An old pickup truck that rattled when it climbed and stalled if you didn't coax it just right. The radio was analog, dashboard mounted, always warm to the touch like it was alive. I trusted that radio more than people. The case started as a routine patrol assignment. No incident number, no briefing, just a handwritten note in my mailbox telling me to accompany a younger ranger, Evan Morales, on a perimeter check near the northern boundary. The note didn't say why. It didn't have to. You learn quickly which questions don't get answers. Evan was new, smart, still believed procedures existed for a reason. He talked too much on the drive out, filling the cab with noise like silence made him nervous. I remember thinking that was a bad sign. The forest listens better when you talk too much. The area we were assigned didn't match the map. That's the first thing that felt wrong. The road existed, the trees existed, but the sector marker we passed wasn't labeled. Just a blank metal sign, paint scraped clean. Evan slowed the truck and frowned. "Is that normal?" he asked. I told him yes. That was my first lie. We parked just before dusk. The forest beyond the road was denser than it should have been, branches overlapping like they'd grown with intention. No trailheads, no signage, no reason for anyone to be there. And yet the ground showed signs of use, pressed soil, broken undergrowth, paths that didn't lead anywhere you'd expect. We split up. That was the plan anyway, standard procedure on paper. In practice, I stayed within shouting distance. Evan moved ahead, flashlight beam bouncing between trunks, radio clipped to his shoulder. The radio crackled once. "Charlie," Evan said, his voice sharp. "You hear that?" I did, a low hum rising and falling like breathing. Not static, rhythm. "Interference," I said, second lie. We continued for another 10 minutes. Then Evan stopped. "There's something wrong with this place," he said, quieter now. "It feels crowded." Before I could answer, his radio clicked. He froze. "Dispatch," he said. No response. Just that hum again, closer this time. I saw his shoulders tense. Saw the moment doubt turned into fear. Then he stepped forward. Not tripped, not pulled. Stepped like someone had called him closer in a voice only he could hear. His flashlight beam vanished into the trees, swallowed whole. "Evan," I called. No answer. I followed the sound of his footsteps for less than 30 seconds before they stopped. The forest closed in, branches shifting without wind. I raised my flashlight and saw nothing but trees that all looked the same. I called his name again. The radio answered. Not Evan's voice, not anyone's I recognized, just one word spoken clearly, calmly. "Enough." The hum stopped, the forest exhaled, and Evan Morales was gone. The search lasted one day. No dogs, No expanded grid. No report filed under missing personnel. By the next morning, the sector marker was gone entirely, replaced by an unbroken stretch of trees like the road had never led there at all. My supervisor called me into his office, closed the door, slid a single page across the desk. It was blank. "Sign it," he said. I did. That was the moment I understood this wasn't the first time, or the last. They didn't pretend the case never happened because it was confusing. They pretended because it was familiar. And familiarity in that forest was the most dangerous thing of all. After Evan disappeared, the forest went back to pretending it was harmless. That was the part that unsettled me most. No storm, no animals fleeing, no sudden chill in the air, just the same late summer calm that tourists came looking for. Birds returned within minutes. Wind moved through the canopy like nothing had been disturbed. If you didn't know better, you'd swear the place had reset itself. I knew better. I spent the night in the station dorm, fully dressed, boots on, radio beside my bed. Every crackle made my chest tighten. Every pause felt loaded, but nothing calm. No voices, no hum, just silence heavy enough to press down on thought. The next morning, Evan's name was already gone from the duty board. Not crossed out, not marked absent, just erased cleanly like he'd never been assigned there at all. His locker was still there, though open, empty, scrubbed down so thoroughly it smelled of bleach and old metal. The only thing left was a faint outline where his boots used to sit. I asked my supervisor when the search would continue. He didn't answer right away, just stared at the map on his wall, the one with the pencil outlines and the faint thumb smudges around certain areas. "There is no search," he said finally. "There never was." That's when the explanation came. Not all at once, not formally. It came in pieces over the course of days, in half sentences and warnings that sounded more like advice than orders. Certain sectors weren't meant for prolonged patrol. Certain radio frequencies weren't to be acknowledged. Certain disappearances weren't accidents, they were corrections. No one ever used the word entity. No one described it directly. They didn't need to. Everyone who'd been there long enough carried the same tightness behind the eyes, the same careful way of choosing where to stand when the forest got quiet. At night, the radios started acting up again, but only near that erased stretch of land. They didn't call names anymore. Instead, they clicked once like a knuckle on wood whenever someone got too close. A warning, or a reminder. I tested it once. Drove the boundary road alone just after midnight, map folded on my lap. When I crossed an invisible line, nothing marked, nothing obvious, the radio clicked. One sharp sound, no static, no voice. I backed up 20 feet. Silence. That's when I understood this wasn't random. It was managed. Maintained like a dam you didn't look at too closely, because knowing how thin it really was wouldn't help anyone sleep. The federal men arrived 3 days later. Unmarked cars, clean boots, polite questions that didn't sound like questions. They asked me to recount the patrol, not what I saw, what I logged. When I told them there was no log, they nodded like that was the correct answer. One of them flipped through my notebook anyway. Slow, careful. He paused at a page I'd written in pencil and rubbed the edge with his thumb until the graphite smeared. "You should be more careful," he said. "Pencil fades." After they left, I burned that notebook behind the station. Watched the pages curl and blacken until there was nothing left but ash drifting into the trees. It felt less like destruction and more like compliance. The forest stayed quiet after that. Too quiet. Weeks passed without incident. No radio anomalies, No unexplained tracks. It was almost convincing. Then the hikers went missing. A couple from out of state. Wrong turn, they said. Poor map reading. Happens all the time. Except these two vanished less than a mile from a marked trail in broad daylight. Their car was found where they'd parked it. Doors locked. Food still in the cooler. The search was immediate and carefully limited. I recognized the pattern now. The invisible line. The way people naturally drifted away from certain areas without knowing why. The way compasses hesitated. The way sound flattened out. We found one of their backpacks near the boundary road. Clean. No tears, no blood, just placed there upright like someone wanted it noticed. That night the radio spoke again. Not to me, to everyone. All units simultaneously, across every channel. Too close, it said. Same calm voice, same certainty. The transmission lasted less than a second, long enough to be undeniable, short enough that no one could isolate where it came from. The station erupted in noise, questions, calls to dispatch, voices overlapping. Then the phone rang. Orders came down fast after that. Trails closed for maintenance. Rangers reassigned. The hikers' disappearance folded neatly into statistics and seasonal warnings. Life went on. Except I started dreaming again. Dreaming of standing just inside that erased sector, watching something move between the trees. Not hunting, not stalking, just passing through. Like we were a corridor it occasionally used. I realized then that Evan hadn't been taken by chance. He'd been taken because he was new, because he didn't know where not to stand, because the forest doesn't explain itself twice. And the worst part, the thing that still keeps me awake, is that I knew what would happen the next time someone stepped too far. Because I'd been warned. And because soon, very soon, I was going to be ordered to step there myself. The order came down on a Thursday afternoon, typed on thin paper and slipped into my mailbox like it didn't want to be seen. No incident number, no explanation, just a patrol assignment with coordinates that didn't exist on any official map. I stared at it for a long time before folding it and putting it in my pocket. By then I understood what it meant. This wasn't punishment. It wasn't even curiosity. It was maintenance. Every so often the balance tipped too far in one direction, too many close calls, too much attention, too many questions. When that happened, someone familiar had to step in. Someone who already knew the rules. Someone who would come back. I took the old truck out just before dusk. Same truck I'd driven 100 times, engine knocking like it always had. Same radio humming low like it was already awake. I didn't bring a partner. That part was explicit. The road narrowed the farther I went. Trees leaned in, their branches overlapping until the sky became a thin ribbon of gray overhead. I stopped where the pavement ended and the forest began. No sign, no marker, just a place where the road decided not to continue. I stepped out and listened. The forest was quiet but not empty. There's a difference. Empty feels hollow. This felt occupied. I crossed the line. The air changed immediately, thicker, heavier, like breathing through cloth. My flashlight beam shortened, edges blurring as if light itself was being absorbed. The ground under my boots was worn smooth, not by weather but by passage. Paths overlapped and crossed without logic, looping back on themselves. The radio clicked once. Not a warning this time, an acknowledgement. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The presence made itself known without sound, without shape. It pressed in from all directions at once, not threatening, not welcoming, evaluating. I felt memories surface that weren't mine, men standing where I stood, some confused, some terrified, a few calm enough to understand what was happening even as it happened. Most of them never left. I realized then why the forest stayed so pristine, why there were no bones, no signs of struggle. Nothing was discarded. Everything was retained. "You remember," the presence pressed into me. "Yes," I said, my voice barely holding together. "You keep remembering." That was my role, not to fight, not to expose, to remember where the line was and make sure others didn't cross it by accident. Silence wasn't cruelty, it was containment. I don't know how long I stood there. Time didn't apply the way it should have. When the pressure finally eased, I was alone again. The forest loosened its grip, just enough to let me breathe. I walked back to the truck without looking behind me. When I reached the road, the radio crackled softly, almost gently. "Accepted," it said. I retired 3 years later. No ceremony, no commendation, just a quiet handshake and a reminder that some knowledge ages better if it's kept private. I agreed. I kept the truth folded away, only taking it out in moments when the world felt too confident about how safe it was. The case was never reopened. Evan Morales doesn't exist in any database. The hikers were reduced to numbers. The erased sector remains blank on every map. But I still drive past forests sometimes and feel that pressure behind my eyes. Still notice when trees grow too close together, when sound flattens, when radios hesitate before speaking. This confession isn't meant to expose anything. It's meant to explain why some answers never come, why certain cases vanish without resolution, why silence sometimes is the only thing standing between order and something much older reclaiming its space. They pretended this case never happened because pretending was part of the agreement. And as long as we keep pretending, the forest keeps its distance.